Claus Carlsen, welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Brent. Happy to be here. How are
Yeah,
you
man. I
doing?
wish I'm doing not great, man. Like the rest of the world. I think this is why I invited you back is to discuss some of the darker aspects that are going on in the world. Seems like the world's gone crazy lately, man. And I feel like you and me and maybe some other elder statesmen that have some collected wisdom, might be helpful in this situation. That's my intention here to sort of bring a positive spin and figure out can we pull back from this cliff, man? Can we move forward as a society?
Yeah, I think pulling back from the cliff is it's precisely my feeling, and we haven't even discussed it. But describes exactly how I feel, and I think what surprised me last week with Charlie Kirk, with the Charlie Kirk assassination, was how bad I felt. In fact,
Mm.
I felt pretty crappy on that day. I don't know if it was a premonition or related to some of the other events that had been published with the Ukrainian girl and
Oh
those things.
God.
But I didn't really sleep that night. So he was assassinated in, I think, sometime during the day, Utah time, which was in the late night my time. But I didn't really sleep much, which was I couldn't really understand why am I feeling like this. Obviously, a lot of what he says are things which I agree with, and some of it maybe not so much. Probably mainly due to the fact that I'm not an American person, so I didn't grow up in that culture. But uh, I kind of felt it was totally unrelated to any political views or anything like that. It was just awful and ghastly.
It's understatement of the century. And to compound how awful and ghastly and graphic, right? I think we all got this just stream. Every other post was some new angle and slow motion.
Mm.
And I think it collectively traumatized like a whole lot of people. We haven't seen anything like that, I don't believe. Like, I can't remember anything like that that just completely hit so deeply to one group of people, but conversely, seeing the celebrations. And it's not just a couple of wackos on TikTok, but there was a wide scale celebration, people laughing, people mocking, making fun of it. And I've never seen anything like it in my entire life, man. I don't know about you.
No, that was I don't know, just mind blowing in a not good way. And I think you can understand. It's understandable that you have a few wackos, and especially that you have some young people who are still finding out what's what and things like that. They probably more easily get enthusiastic about their ideologies, and they feel like some of us felt when we were 20 and younger, that we had the solution for everything and knew everything. So I can understand that, but I have less. I just can't really understand adults, journalists, politicians, professional people,
Teachers. There
teachers,
was a whole bunch of school teachers, man.
doctors, nurses, maybe not. I don't know, doctors, healthcare professionals. That's. I think if it's extra problematic if you have a profession which is connected with some kind of higher level of responsibility for other people, like being a politician, a doctor, a lawyer, uh, manager of a business, or things like that. Yeah,
Yeah, there was
very
a
very horrifying and very surprising. And what surprised me is that it just keeps it actually keeps going. It's still going.
what do you
It's like,
mean what do you mean by it's still going?
there are still people doubling down and
Mm.
doing these things. It's not, I'm not looking for them, but of course when you click the algorithm, when you click on one and watch it gives you more of it. So it gives you more of the new ones as well. And I think it's kind of in a way it's a little bit of it's a kind of a problematic issue because so what do you say when you say, okay, free speech? If we are if we are very firm on free speech, these people should be allowed to freely express their opinions with no limitations. And I can't really, honestly, I would be conflicted to say that people in the cases where I disagree with them, they shouldn't be allowed to say these things, as abhorrent as they are. So I can't be of the opinion that they shouldn't be able to say these things. On the other hand, I think if you say things which are disgusting to somebody else, I think it's natural to expect that there might be some consequences. And by consequences, I don't mean bodily harm or anything like that, but there will be consequences in terms of you're going to get some backlash from what you say. And
Yeah, it's an important distinction. I'm really glad you called that out, because a lot of folks that I know that are European, they are not free speech absolutes at all.
No.
They are very in favor of restricting speech,
Yes.
that especially speech that causes offense. And as an American, and also as a philosopher, I'm like, hey man, like, you have a natural right to make whatever mouth noises that you want. You should be able to. But to your
Yes.
point, like, there should also be an understanding that you're responsible for your speech as well. And that if, like, for example, these people are complaining they're getting fired, like some people are pointing out their posts to their employer and their employer's cutting ties with them, and now they're crying about that. And it's like, look, man, like, you have the freedom, but that doesn't mean that you're devoid of responsibility relating to that speech.
Exactly. And I think I was watching a few clips of it was Scott Adams, the cartoonist Scott Adams, and I think his view kind of spoke to me in the way that he said that his way of understanding it is that there's a large group of people who are, in a way, they're hypnotized. I mean, I don't think he doesn't mean virtually, he doesn't mean actually hypnotized, but in a kind of in a mass hypnosis sense. So they feel that they by expressing this type of sentiment, they are of course expressing it to their friends and their in-group, and they are expecting to get praised for this because they think that this is the opinion that they are supposed to express. And I think there is that has a lot of merit, that way of viewing it. I don't think there is I think if you have what for some of us seems like evil behavior, to me it seems like evil behavior, wishing ill, wishing somebody's dead, celebrating when somebody's dead. This is not, it's not really a normal part of it's not normal behavior in our society. It certainly it hasn't been, and so I think it's not because these human beings are inherently bad human beings. Obviously, they've been influenced somehow, or have sought influence somehow, or are expressing some kind of, I don't know, frustration, emotion, which they feel is an appropriate way of then expressing it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to call out that they, like all humans, have this program. I think there's something people aren't cognizant of, is that we've got this tribalism that's baked into our DNA. We have this in group and we have this out group. We have the us and we have the other, and we have, and for whatever reason, it's helped our survival to have this sort of deep tribalism. And oftentimes tribalism comes with violence, right? Like, you literally, the way you solve things historically is by murdering the other tribe,
Yes.
right, and taking over. And so I think that it's fair to sort of acknowledge that we have this program, these latent biological programs that run, and I think they do get stoked by the algorithm. I've done a lot of research into MK Ultra, and it's weird because you bring up MK Ultra and people, if you're not aware of it, you sound like you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. But essentially, it came from the Department of Defense and the CIA.
Yes.
because the troops were coming home from China. Some of them didn't even come home. They decided to stay because they had so been brainwashed by the Chinese, and they wanted to study from a national security standpoint, like how do you mind control people like this? And a lot of that stuff from DARPA has made itself into, or has made its way into the algorithms that are sort of like you called up. They're literally programming people. The social media algorithms are sort of mind controlling people to a certain degree, and stoking these latent biological programs that we all have hiding in our DNA. And it's not surprising to me that we're seeing this. It's upsetting, but it's definitely not surprising.
That's what it looks like to me as well. And by the way, I don't think MK Ultra. I don't think it's a controversial or conspiratorial anything. It's pretty well documented that these programs existed and a lot of what they did. So I don't think there's an issue with that. The programming. My feeling of this when I've been thinking about it the last days, months, years, is that this is nothing new, and but the big difference is that when we spend most of our time in front of a screen, scrolling something which is controlled and fed to us by an algorithm which has whatever instructions it has, regardless whether it denies it. It's kind of turbocharged to in the nth degree compared to in the, let's say, old days, just a few years back, just a couple of decades back, when it was a newspaper and a TV program, etc. And I think one of the things I notice, just as a small example, recent history, if I take the generation, which is the generation just a little bit older than me, the boomers, and those who are older than them, watching the news or listening to the news on the radio or watching it on TV or whatever medium is something which they consider to be both important and critical. Most of the ones I know don't seem to have any sort of realization that this could be either programming or entertainment or both. So they're watching things, they're interested, they're getting into things on a very superficial level, which riles them up a little bit, which they deem as being important, but things they have no influence on. So if you have no influence on it, it's probably there to have an influence on you, to mold your opinions and your behaviors, etc. Another thing, of course, is just marketing, advertising of any form, and any form of PR, propaganda, marketing, which is also nothing new. And it's absolutely nothing new that it's very, very effective. If it wasn't, corporations and companies wouldn't spend trillions every year globally. I think it's about $8 trillion globally that's spent on advertising on a global scale. For medication, processed foods. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and so it's interesting. There's a convergence there between the intelligence community and advertising, right? So Edward
Yes.
Bernays, if you know who that is, he's the guy who sort of mainstreamed propaganda, and obviously, we understand the impacts of that with respect to marketing. Most people do, but I think few people understand the impacts from the intelligence community side. And we talked about MK Ultra already, but there was another important program that's still ongoing, which is called Operation Mockingbird. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so actually, Tulsi Gabbard was saying, she's the head of the intelligence services. She's like, I'm trying to shut it down, which means that's how durable it is. And to sort of circle back to your point about the boomers and the older generation, or even back in the 80s and early 90s, it was much easier, I think, to control the narrative because you had three major news channels in the United States. I'm not sure the rest of the world, but we had ABC,
Yes.
NBC,
Yeah,
CBS. Sure. And you could very easily infiltrate these organizations and push whatever narrative you wanted to. And I think there's some positives and negatives associated with that. Some positives from a tribal perspective is that everybody the Overton window was much narrower, right? You had this sort of belief structure that everyone swam in the same ontological waters, right? We all
Yes.
sort of believed because you had nothing but the information from the major media that came in, and it was very easy to steer the cattle. And I think now with the proliferation of social media and the more decentralized nature of media, the fact that you can have down to the individual posting on social media about reporting on any topic or giving their analysis, like back in the day, bandwidth was so expensive. That was the problem, right? Just the bandwidth was incredibly expensive. You
Yes.
had to have the advertisers, you had to have the infrastructure, and now some idiot like me can be on the internet and say whatever he wants with very little friction. And I
Yes.
think that has proliferated a shattering of that sort of unified paradigm where it kept us together, but also it was not exactly pro-truth in any sense, so I don't know what to do about that, but I'm seeing that as sort of contributing to the problems that we're facing now. Is that it's all this sort of micro-fractured reality, and we can't even agree. It's like a post-truth society. We can't even agree on basic facts oftentimes.
Yeah, I think in a way it's more real, isn't it? Because maybe this is actually closer to what people are, or the group of all humans on Earth are like. That in fact it is not only polarized but somewhat fractured. But I think with the, let's call it, the democratization of communicating, so getting the cost of bandwidth down, I think it's probably led to some hardening and polarization on the fringes. So we've got, and that's maybe why we have more of these what we perceive as completely loony people saying loony things. But the people who are not really served that much is the rest of us, and we are 70, 80%, maybe even 90% of the population. We're kind of swimming in the middle in these muddy waters, and we've been a little bit lost for a good while, and maybe we'll continue to be lost for a while. And I think that's all this censorship talk in the EU, I think, is an attempt to mitigate that and kind of drive it back into a more controlled format.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Europe, you were talking about freedom of speech. European countries, the few countries that actually have freedom of speech in their constitutions or in their legislation. Many countries don't have a constitution in the same way the US does, but in their foundational legislation are very few. So most countries don't even have, like the UK does not have, freedom of speech legally protected. It doesn't exist as a legal concept. And the rest of them have only had it for a very short time. So for most of history, unlike the US, over here there hasn't been freedom of speech. So our default, and think about a big part of the European countries, also a good part of the EU, they were part of communist dictatorships from 1917 until late 80s, early 90s. And so there's a good tradition for keeping your mouth shut and saying what you're supposed to say. And of course you can think what you want, but being censored.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and that's a pretty good analysis. But to pivot back, I don't think that we evolved to participate in a global community, right? I think that if you look, even back when I was growing up in the 80s, 70s, early 90s, people went outside and they hung out with each other, and you had to call somebody on their home phone if you wanted to connect with them. Like we had small tribes. You had your school, you had your church, you had your family, you had your friends, and it was a relatively stable, like a time scale stable size of a social circle. And with the advent of social media, we had now, the ability, which for better or for worse, but to connect with people like you and me. You're in Finland, I'm in the United States. Like we can do this now. But also, as a downside, we're not participating in a global community, a global conversation. And we're also seeing every single global horror pumped directly into our eyeballs. I don't think our brains and our souls were sort of evolved to accept and imbibe, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the consequences of the information system we have is a total overload of information. You know, even an overload of what you could deem as being to an extent important or information which can shift things. There's even an overload of that, which is I don't know. I would think, if I think negatively about, well, let's say if I think of it from a point of view of how to control people, actually I think it's a great opportunity, because it should be much easier to deflect people from things I don't want my constituents to focus on, and to to get them to focus on something else while I'm taking care of some things which might be a little bit controversial locally. There might be some protesting, etc. So let's see if we can't find some disaster or some other things that we can pump up and make into an interesting situation to deflect from some things that my voters or other constituents might not like. I think for that, it's a great opportunity. And of course, in terms of marketing stuff, it's also great because you have huge reach for very little money. So I would say it definitely can be something. So the internet and all the systems that we have, it definitely can easily be a system to drive centralization on a global scale of everything. So centralize, bigger monopolies in terms of corporate, production of whatever physical things or services, etc. But also politically. So
Yeah,
maybe it's wanted. I don't know.
Depends. I guess the question is wanted by whom, right?
Yeah. Not by us.
Yeah, and this you raised a couple of things that made me wonder. Were you talking about Jeffrey Epstein's situation by chance?
In fact, I wasn't.
Oh,
But I
that's
mean
the first thing that
that's
came to mind for me.
I think that's it's just I think that whole situation is just a interesting, and also because it's very recent or let's say current to an extent. I think it's probably something which could potentially, maybe hopefully, be used to throw some light on some things and processes. I was watching and by that I meant I think there have probably been similar types of cases throughout history. But so what? We're talking
For
about today,
sure.
and that's what counts. I was watching a few podcasts where a lady was being interviewed, Whitney Webb.
Whitney Webb. I love Whitney Webb's work.
Yeah, that was very. I find it very interesting, and I recommend anyone who's listening here. I recommend have a look at Whitney Webb. She's very data based in her approach. So she's very well read and really seems to have done her research incredibly well.
Autistically well. She is,
and she's very articulate, and has incredible memory and recall of everything that she's touched there. So and that certainly gave some new dimensions and viewpoints and more understanding for me. One of which was how long they've actually been building this let's say construct, of which Jeffrey Epstein was just I would even say a relatively small cog in a larger system, and this system will, when it needs to, it will sacrifice whatever person it needs to sacrifice to protect itself. And I think that's what's happened in his case, that he's been sacrificed, or whatever happened to him, but he's been taken out of public view, at least. Who knows what happened to the guy? I'm not saying he didn't. I'm not saying he is alive, but also not saying he isn't alive.
Yeah,
What do we know?
there's no way for us to know.
What do
That's
we
the
know? We
weird.
don't really know anything, do we?
Correct. And I think that's the problem. We talked about the post-truth society that
Yes.
we live in right now, and the lack of faith in our institutions. That was something from the boomer era and beyond that everyone just sort of agreed, like, oh yeah, we can basically trust the FBI or whatever.
Yes.
And now, when we saw, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who made their entire career, made millions of dollars grifting off of the Epstein thing, saying things that were obviously true, then they take over. Did you see the news conference with those two? Look like a hostage video.
Yeah, they didn't look good. They looked very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. Then seeing Kash Patel go on Rogan and say all that absolute nonsense.
That was embarrassing. Yeah,
that was terrible. So we know now. So we know. Okay, this is the weird thing about being in America, or maybe even just being a citizen of the world, is that we know that there's this giant operation that's clearly tied to intelligence, most likely Mossad, knowing that Glenn Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, was a known Mossad agent and also a trader in compromat material and blackmailing people. And he ended up, quote unquote, dying under weird circumstances on his boats, and it was tied to Jamal Khashoggi. Like, there's all these sort of links, and it seems like we have continuity between these operations. So we just know every person who has two brain cells is like, okay, this is a blackmail operation, and most likely Israel was raping children to catch powerful people in compromising positions. And then the head of the FBI comes on board, and the DOJ saying, actually nothing to see here. There's no Epstein situation. Look the other way. We're please move on. And so we just know that, like, we're being 100% lied to top to bottom, and we're now left to try to, from publicly available sources, piece this patchwork of data points together to try to arrive at our closest approximation of what the truth might be.
Yeah, and I think I don't have much hope, to be honest. And the same goes for some other operations, some of the recent events as well. But I'll come back to that. But just a quick on Maxwell and Epstein and all that. Again, Whitney Webb. Go and watch Whitney Webb. She can lay this out in easily digestible detail. But I think I'm not even sure it's. I don't know whether we are ever going to know which interests and which people are behind it, and whether we even know who these people are or what these interests are. And for me, I have no problem with using Mossad as a working thesis or whatever we call it. I think to a certain extent, these organizations are part of a network that have common interests. And who is controlling what at which time, who knows? But it doesn't really matter. I think from my point of view, what matters is, it's secret. They're operating above any laws. Let's say there's no apparent accountability, and we have no influence on these things, and it corrupts our systems to a degree that's difficult to say, but probably to a high degree, and having systems which are corrupt is in my view, that's the single biggest problem. It's bigger than anything else, because if the system is corrupted, the rule of law isn't rule of law. Your norms and values aren't your norms and values. You can be whatever religion you want to be. Those values are also not those the values which help you. At least they don't apply to society at large, and it's highly problematic. And I'm not I'm not propagating, by the way, that people should be this or that religion or whatever. It's that I'm very, I think, a product of the societies I've grown up in, which are very secular societies. Although I'm a Christian, but like most of the indigenous populations here are Christians since about 1100, 1200.
Yeah, totally. And I think you're skipping ahead from where I wanted to go, which is I wanted to spend the last
Let's
part of
reverse.
the. Yeah, no. I think it's great. Like we're touching on what I'm interested in. I think you're probably interested in is like, okay, here's the diagnosis. What's a prescription? Right. And so I let's put a pin in this real quick because I'm going to go through this stuff because I do think these corrupted systems and the question of whether they're even recoverable in their current format, democracy, all these things that people take for granted. Like that's the interesting question for me that I
Yes.
want
Yeah.
to, and I want to
Indeed.
I want to go through your tweet and the impact of Christianity on the West, all these things, right? So I want to put a pin just real quick because I want to go back because we were on the Epstein thread. And I want to ask you, do you have suspicion that Charlie Kirk was murdered due to the Epstein situation and the links to Israel?
Very good question, and it's something I've thought about. I don't have a specific suspicion, but I'm I'm pretty convinced that we are never gonna know
Mm-hmm.
who actually who killed him and why it happened. I don't think this is going to be revealed to us.
I agree.
It's very likely that the young man who was apprehended, I forget his name, Taylor, whatever,
Tyler Robinson.
Tyler Robinson. Very possible that he's going to be convicted and maybe even executed and whatever. But it's very difficult to say whether. It's difficult to say what happened, isn't it?
He might not make it to trial. I don't know if you
He might
heard,
not
but
make. Yeah, exactly.
he is now in the special housing unit, a very similar special housing unit as Jeffrey Epstein was held in. I would not be surprised if he got unalived through this process.
Yes, I think I don't know. Yeah, I think the the only thing I can conclusively say is I simply don't know, and there are just too many questions, and I don't think anyone can go on X or any other social media and see what the questions are and which ones they think have merit or not. It doesn't really matter. I think the key issue here is that I think it's pretty clear that we are not inclined to automatically trust what the authorities tell us about this situation, and we're not inclined to automatically trust or believe that it's the truth, even if somebody's convicted and whatever happens. So.
Sure, and you're being very careful, Klaus, and I'm trying to get you to play with some ideas here, be a little edgy. No, I get that. Like we've talked about this.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have any clue what actually happened with respect to the official story, other than the official story is probably bullshit. Exactly. But what we do know about the case is that the dude got shot in the neck, and there were multiple co-conspirators. Right. Yes. So we know there was that guy, that Zinn fellow who happened to have a long history relating to a bunch of really sketchy things. The Boston marathon bombing. He called in a bomb threat to the Salt Lake City marathon, which, by the way, I've ran a couple of times. Yeah. And also had some 9/11 propaganda tape that he was involved in. And then to have him run an immediate diversion, which was clearly a diversion if you watch the video, saying, shoot me, I'll do it again, like drawing attention away from the shooter. It was clearly coordinated. And then the guy outside the venue that the cops had captured that had a gun that turned out to be a pellet gun, right? So there's this multiple diversion that are going on.
With the information that's been shared so far, it seems to me that the guy that they claim, that the guy who's the official main suspect, to me, he might be a diversion as well.
That's what I'm thinking as well.
Because there are some things, but that it might just be because I don't have because the information has been presented in an odd way. But that he has this hunting rifle. And I have hunting rifles, so I know what they're like, and I know what this specific gun is like very well. This is not a gun which was made to be taken apart. and
Nope.
and put back together, and then taken apart again and be put back together again quickly or at all. It can be done, but it requires tools, and you need some kind of bench to put the damn thing in. Yeah, it just sounds odd, and I think the feeling I get from that is that it seems to me, or it could be, one scenario could be that they place this kind of obviously odd and slightly nonsensical clues into the public media or to the public realm to get people speculating and discussing about all kinds of things and making up theories,
Yep.
etc. So that they're busy doing that, and they're let's get them off on that trail, so they're not spending too much time on some other trails. To me, it feels like that whole thing feels like a diversion. Doesn't mean he didn't take the shot or anything, but yeah, something's off.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, I'm open to all the evidence, and if there is compelling evidence to the contrary, fine, I'll follow wherever the evidence leads. But I think you and I know there's these certain, especially as you get older, man. You've seen a lot of things, you've seen a lot of life. Your bullshit detector gets very finely tuned, and when you start to smell something very, very off, it's easy to put that pattern recognition machinery to work and be like,
Yes, it
ooh,
is.
hey, there's something really wrong. And I got this feeling very early that this stinks. The official story, that weird stuff with the gun. Because if he was supposedly so adept with firearms, you show all the pictures of him growing up with all these firearms. Like, for example, I've got an AR-15 that has a folding stock. I can fit it in my backpack, and I often carry it in my backpack when I'm going to go to a large event that, in the United States, you never know. There could be a mass shooting that, I would rather have my AR-15 than just a pistol to engage a target, which has a scope on it. Like,
of course,
he could have easily had a foldable AR in his backpack. He could have been much more effective in breaking it down. And, you just watch this ridiculous stuff about him limping down the side of the street with this giant rifle down his pants.
Come on.
None of it makes any sense. And just watching him jump off the roof, and he doesn't even have the rifle, but then they find the rifle in the woods.
Let's be realistic now. I mean, he's 5'10", I'm 5'11", so almost same height. My main hunting rifle is a slightly shorter one than the one he has. There is no way in hell I can pack that, regardless what kind of trousers I have on, down my trouser leg. Not happening. There's no way I can walk if I put it in the leg. It's just preposterous nonsense.
And what this makes me wonder, with respect to him potentially being another diversion, is like, are there so many inconsistencies with the facts of the case to where he would just walk anyway? Like, no jury could convict him based off of all of the craziness and the inconsistencies, and and maybe he is just a long-term diversion to keep everybody focused on him over the long arc, while whoever did this and however they did it just completely escaped scot-free.
Yeah, it's easy. You could easily imagine that they could draw it out for a decade or longer with this guy. And but anyway, I think the thing that kind of the thing that has made me feel bad and still has me feeling bad is irrespective of who the shooter was. It's unrelated to the shooter and unrelated to diversions and things like that. It's the fact that the fact that a guy like Charlie Kirk had to be assassinated is just crazy.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I don't. Oh, man, maybe I need to. Now is the time we need to start getting into the prescription, man, because I think we know there's a whole bunch of problems, but I wanted to reference your tweet, and so what started off, and I love seeing this from you because you're so niche down with the carnivore space and the fitness space, and I love seeing people that just say, to hell with this, I got to say something. But you said, and I'm done tolerating actions that corrode the integrity, Christian values, and principles that hold our civilized societies together. Then you have an enumerated list. I want to go through this list. I think this is brilliant, and I love these topics. You said the foundational elements of those principles and values, in my opinion. Let's go through number one: rule of law applied equally to everyone. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's very, very simple concept that we have a set of have a set of rules or a set of laws, and no matter who you are, no matter your religion, ethnicity, or anything else, no matter how rich you are, how poor you are, if you do a specific thing which is prohibited, the punishment is the same, or the consequences are the same, even if there isn't a punishment, but the consequences should be the same. This is very, very, very basic thing of an uncorrupt society, and it's definitely also a Christian value. I don't know whether it's also a value in other religions. I'm not a religious scholar, so and obviously because I grew up as a normal agnostic Christian here in Scandinavia, Christianity is what I know something about.
So you're an agnostic Christian. That's interesting. So that's
not or a secular. Call me whatever you want. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus, the resurrection, and I'm just not a what do you call it? I'm not a church-going Christian because the type of Christianity that I have been taught and I grew up with does not require anyone between me and God.
So you're not Catholic, that's for sure.
Indeed. I have nothing against Catholics.
No, I grew up Catholic, so I just it's a little
So
shout out to the Catholics.
So but I think the Bible is very clear on this point as well. So I'm just you could say a little bit fundamental in that. I'm not a fundamentalist, but let's just go by the scripture, and that's enough for me. I don't need any men or women or other genders to tell me how to communicate with God.
Cool. So I'm going to link these two together. I'm going to skip ahead a point.
Yeah.
So we talked about rule of law applied equally to everyone, non-corrupt society. Put a pin in that one. Democratic governance and accountable institutions. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's I'm kind of writing the things that I used to believe that we have up here in at least in Scandinavia and in many other European countries and the US, by the way. I don't know how to elaborate on that, but I do think that that a system with which is based on a democratic way of operating and a system of governance which is built on that, I think it's a system which is, if it's run well, it's not as corruptible as other systems. Although anything with humans is, of course, completely corruptible. But I think
why do you find value in that? I guess is my question. Why the democratic aspect of that? Because
thank you. I find value in it because I think we should be treated equally. I think to me it's part of the same thing as rule of law. I think rule of law is more important if I had to choose between the two. But I think a democratic system which makes the laws and the rules that we adhere to is one which makes a country or a society safer, more livable in many ways, and it under the right circumstances it makes it also more effective. And by effective I mean it provides the most quality of life and value for the most people in society.
Got it. So what you're making is essentially the utilitarian argument, is that this form of governance and lawmaking will result in a better outcome.
Yes, and a better outcome for everyone. Let's say almost, not everyone, almost everyone, for the majority of the people. And why do I think that? Because fundamentally my feeling is, and I'm not, people who know me, if they listen to me, they'll think, "What? He's gone bananas." But anyway, I've not gone bananas, but I'm just trying to express what I'm thinking in a way that is also more easily understandable to my American friends. This is conforms very well with Christianity, which is basically a quite egalitarian system, a religion and belief system. And I very strongly feel that anyone's worth as a human being is not less than mine.
Okay, now you teed me up for some fun stuff. So let's move on to the next point. Keep all that in mind, everybody. Your other point was individual rights and freedom of speech, belief, and association. So the first one, individual rights. What's the nature of individual rights? Because I come from America and I also have a deep philosophical tradition. Like you probably see me tweet. Everything I talk about, even if it's politically related or specifically tied to an instantiation, under the surface is actually linked to a philosophical argument, essentially a moral argument about the nature of individual rights. And it ties very closely with what the founders in the United States believed about rights, which is that they're unalienable, meaning you can't get rid of them. Like they're inherent in your body. They're property that you own.
Yes.
And it's an enumerated list of negative. The concept of positive rights is a European thing, very much. So I'm entitled to healthcare. I'm entitled to basic living expenses. I'm entitled, right? That's a positive right, and I reject that outright. I'm like, you cannot have a positive right without conscripting another in your service, right? So I love this thought experiment, which is Klaus and I crash on a desert island. What do I have a right to? If I have a right to food, that means Klaus has an obligation to provide it for me. Same with healthcare, same with housing, whatever. Yes. Right. So I think it's absolutely laughable that people believe in the concept of positive rights. Like you can instantiate it in law and you say, yes, we're going to have a society that provides these things. But from a philosophical perspective, I think it's evil. It's deeply evil. It's as evil as chattel slavery, in my opinion, because you're stealing the productive labor and resources from another human being that is violently conscripted in your service. I don't believe in that. And so,
yes.
So to get to my point, I'm sorry, there's a really long preamble. I'm getting there, but my view, individual rights are unalienable. They're things that you absolutely, these are lines, these are boundaries that you absolutely must not cross in any situation. Meaning that rape, 100%, nope. Murder, theft, right? There's a whole list of things, kidnapping, right? Enslavement. There's these things that you just absolutely must not do under any circumstances. And this is where I think that this comes in direct conflict with this concept of democratic societies, right? So talk to me about how you resolve that conflict in your mind.
Yeah, I think to an extent it's probably not one which can be resolved. In principle, I'm 100% with you on those things. No protest from me at all. I think in practice, if we look at the country, the European countries, or the country where I'm living now, which is Finland, it's obviously not the US. Obviously, it's a very social democrat, like the other Nordic countries and some of the other European countries. It is built on actually exploiting people who are the people who are more capable and are willing to work harder. They get exploited to fulfill the rights of those who either don't want to or can't produce or be productive. And I think that in practice, this system it's been extremely effective in actually realizing what I was talking about, which is a society which has very low crime rates. It's a very, very safe, boring place, very safe. Everybody is almost the same. There are very few people who have more than somebody else, and very little crime or anything. And a country like Finland or Sweden, probably Norway as well, it's not because there are few guns. There are loads of guns, like Canada, loads and loads of guns. But very low violence of any sort. And I think this kind of adapted market economy socialism, or whatever you want to call it, has been very effective in making such a society. The problem is when it gets hijacked. But it looks like the U.S. got hijacked as well, although it was a completely different philosophical starting from a different philosophical starting point, hijacked by the same type of interest, where we suddenly have millions of people in Finland. It's not millions, but tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people coming into the country who have no qualifications, and most of them don't work, and so we have to carry them. They don't want to integrate. They're against our values and our systems and these kind of things. I can kind of understand that we would be an easy target because we have a kind of an inbuilt pathological empathy in our system. It doesn't have to be like, I'm quoting Gard Saad, but with the pathological empathy, the system doesn't have to be like that. But I think for certain reasons, probably the main reason being that our societies up here have been mainly feminist, ideologically feminist controlled since the late 60s, early 70s. When you combine that with a socialist market economy and these kind of over empathetic things, it probably takes the society logically to a situation where you have these kind of issues too much.
Which leads me to your follow-up tweet. I loved this. You said, I've realized that deeper empathy and firm boundaries can coexist. Growing up in a culture that often equates tolerance with accepting everything, I once thought drawing hard lines meant lacking compassion. It doesn't. You can care for people and still refuse to compromise the values and systems that keep a free society strong.
Yes. Yeah, I think, we were taught a lot of things when I went to school. I went to school in Denmark, but it's very similar to here. And of course, I was taught that men are ridiculous and women do everything better and all this kind of stuff. But also the tolerance stuff, and that we have to help others. A lot of things which, in principle, you could say are good things, or at least they sound good. And then, of course, you get whipped into, you're not allowed to ask questions, at least with certain teachers. You were not allowed to ask questions unless you ask the right question. But actually, I had one of my best teachers he was a city council member for the Socialist Party, but he allowed all questions. So good discussions.
Yeah, it seems like there's this invitation to self-attack if you even question anything other than pathological, quote unquote, empathy, which I don't think is empathy at all.
No, United States, it's tyranny.
Particularly.
Yeah. It's tyranny.
It's tyrannizing people, and it's sort of this appeal to self-erasure. And I think it's a very
it's disingenuous. It's bad faith. It's all kinds of things. It's
It's predatory, in my view.
Predatory,
right?
psychopathic people hijack it immediately, regardless of of gender. And I would like to add that not only men can be psychopaths or narcissists. It is not exclusively men people.
Clearly not. But I guess my point is that the really disturbing thing about it for me is that, and maybe it's I don't know, maybe give me your European perspective. In the United States, it feels like since the United States does have a history, particularly of racism, right, and literal chattel slavery, that the white population seems very, very prone to this type of attack, this sort of appeal to self-erasure and self-attack, and like, oh, don't call me this, I don't want to be lumped in with this bad group. And they literally, they do have the empathy, and they don't want that social ostracism. And so I think they will oftentimes just, okay, whatever you want, just don't call me the bad name, just don't apply this label to me, I don't want that social ostracism. It only works on people with empathy, right? Like people that don't have empathy
Yes.
are like, "Fuck you, I don't care. Call me whatever you want," right?
Exactly. I don't think it's something which works only in the U.S. By the way, I think it's unrelated to anything with slavery or anything like that. I think it's a very simple. It's a simple dynamic that you can see in almost all marriages as well. That how does the wife control or attempt to control the husband? If all else fails, shaming, blaming, gaslighting, and we'll whip this guy into doing
Emotional outbursts.
Yeah, exactly, and it works. it works because we don't want to be, even if we're falsely accused, it still works. And it works, so it feels, it's very difficult when you get name called, when you get called a racist. How the hell do you prove a negative, or whatever you get called? And this name calling, the culture of name calling, gaslighting, and manipulating, and these things. This is something which makes both democratic processes or any kind of society, makes it very difficult if this is part of the values and norms that this kind of behavior is not frowned upon. I didn't want to say allowed or not allowed, but at least it should be maybe frowned upon, because it's extremely corrosive and destructive.
Yeah, it is. And we've watched this play out. We've seen the sort of extremes to which this has sort of vacillated back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're seeing that again. We saw it with the first Trump administration really in spades. And then there was the whipsaw effect. And then the left got power. And then they exerted all this control. And there was all this name calling. And then you've got Trump back in office again, who's like the ultimate name caller and flamethrower. And now you've got these two groups that are doing nothing but just screaming epithets at people. And I think it's really dangerous too, because now you've got this right group, which I'm actually most concerned about in America, because the right historically is actually pretty patient. They're not screaming harpies like a lot of the radical side of the left is, and they just kind of like, you try to have you do the Charlie Kirk approach, bring your opponents up, have a good faith discussion, right, and let people scream at you and make a fool of themselves, and you're patient. But the right does have a limit to its patience, and I think we're approaching that. And when the right snaps, it is really bad. I watched Dave Smith do a clip, and he's just like, you guys are idiots. Like, do you know what's going to happen if this actually turns violent? The right in America is going to mow you people completely down. Like, they can be incredibly vicious. And I see the rage, and I see years of that frustration being called all of these names, like building up on that side. And after the Charlie Kirk situation, I saw literal calls for like, we're gonna, we're coming after you. Let's start a civil war. And like, this is incredibly dangerous, man. This is a bad spot.
Yeah. And I think I'd say that Europe, everybody's neutered. So nothing like that's gonna happen here, at least from the indigenous population, or from the whatever you call it. It's not indigenous. But anyway, we were here first anyway. But that's I can see that could be a concern in the U.S. I think one of the issues with let's have a discussion, and I think you can see it when you watch the videos with Charlie, is that you have a guy who's trying to do argumentation based on information. Let's say it's maybe not always fact, but to a great extent it's facts, information, whatever. So trying to debate. And then you have the other side, or the typical representative of the other side is not actually trying to have a debate. Yes. What they're trying to do is they I think I just saw yesterday there was a short clip of a guy, a bearded guy, Nick something. Anyway, I've seen him sometimes before. He said it very well that Charlie, he's trying to debate and discuss, analyze, and his opponents are trying to. So they throw diagnose. You're a racist. Okay, so you're not a racist, but then you're a misogynist. So trying to take what the other person says and use it as a diagnosis tool for showing that you have this mental illness called racism, misogyny, or any other of the
Isms.
isms, narcissist, whatever, and any of the typical left or the ones that are used in marriages which no longer work, mostly towards the husband. Uh, it's not really a level. There isn't really a discussion or debate going on. It's more of a kind of a confrontation, or whatever you want to call it. One is debating, and the other one is just name calling.
Yeah, and I think that's endemic in the left, is that they oftentimes don't want to engage in good faith debate or discussion or dialectic. It's a war, essentially. They're these postmodern warriors that their entire job is to, without any sort of set of morals or values, because postmodernism is based on power. All it says is that there's
Yes.
we objective reality exists, truth exists, but we can't have access to it at all. Therefore, everything is just power games between groups of people. And so they're executing whatever strategy they can to achieve their goal of gaining power. And that's pathological.
Yes, and I would say that I agree, and obviously when that's the goal, you cannot have people saying whatever they want. The freedom of speech is an abomination and a threat to this type of system and thinking. It's not. You can't combine it with that kind of system, and that's why in Soviet Union, the Eastern Bloc couldn't have it. That's why EU is trying to remove and censor because free speech, or even not free speech, but even a little bit of uncontrolled speech can be a threat to the system, or to the narrative at least. And that's also why when you the problem, the reason why it's very difficult to have any kind of discussion with many of these people is because they're simply not equipped to have a discussion about the topic, because they don't know anything about the topic. They just have an opinion, and this opinion is something they've been told, or they've understood. You should represent this opinion, whatever, something about Gaza or something about not Gaza, or whatever. I mean, demonstrated interestingly in what was it? Queers for Gaza, or and transgenders for Gaza, and gays for Gaza.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell? This is completely this is absurd.
Yeah, it's a weird thing watching, a religion that I'm not speaking for the entire religion, but I'm speaking for the more extreme factions of it, that will throw gay people off of rooftops and have a deep disdain for those people. Seeing that group sort of align behind them, that is a very odd, marriage.
It's absurd. It's simply absurd. But it just shows that I think it shows with more clarity than anything else that there is no discussing with those people when they are in this state of mind. I'm not saying they can. We are all extremely suggestible, and everybody can quite easily be in a different state of mind quite quickly. And I'm not talking about any forcing negatively or anything, but simply by positive suggestion. And I think I'm just reflecting on myself, having always been a bit of a slave to advertising. I definitely belong in the group of most suggestible people. That's for sure. And what I'm trying to do to avoid being suggested into oblivion is think about things and have discussions like this, so that I stay awake.
Yeah,
because
man.
Otherwise, of course, also you have to admit as well. I think most people are probably. I would claim most people are relatively comfort-seeking and a little bit lazy. And I think it's part of being a human being. You're trying to do the least possible to have an acceptable situation. And the thing that is offered, at least here, is you get a certain level of comfort if you agree to the system. Yeah, I guess that's inherent in every system, of course. But if you behave, you get these advantages: free healthcare and free whatever, free everything, and
Free.
yeah, free, and
What's your tax
also,
bill look like,
yeah,
Klaus?
it's not
Is that
nice,
free?
not nice. But let's say for somebody who maybe is in a situation where they don't have any other income other than social income from the state, and for the rest of us as well, it's just the system is extremely effective. Everybody's totally transparent. They take almost all your money, then they redistribute it, but everything works really well. It's extremely safe, calm, effective, and it's just easy. It's just easy to. The easiest thing is to say, okay, fine, I'm just going to watch the news, the official news. We have one main channel to provide the official news, which is the state television, which has always been a socialist. Same in Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. So it's socialist, left-leaning state media. Just listen to them, and you know what you're supposed to think, and you can have a very comfortable, safe, and rather uncomplicated life. What's not to like? Then you have the only people who don't like it are crazy people like me and you. We want, I don't know, we want something that we maybe want it because we can't have it. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting, man. Like I almost feel like I've been infected by philosophy. Right? It's once you learn how to critically think about things, it's sometimes it's like the Matrix. There's that scene where the guy's like, plug me back in, make me think I'm eating this juicy steak. It does feel a bit like that sometimes being on the outside. I feel like this absolute crazy person that's getting judged for what I view. Like I find myself to have done a ton of investigation, foundational research, reasoning from first principles, invested all that time in thinking critically, arrived at these conclusions. And then once you arrive at the conclusions, like you're a pariah. Like everybody looks at you like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why can't you just go along with the group? And sometimes I wonder, like, man, am I just doing myself a disservice by adhering to philosophy and ethics and trying to treat people well?
Yes, but I think Brent, I think we don't have a choice. I think it's I don't think we can. I've tried many decades or several decades. I've tried to fit in and be the right thing. I just can't. It's not. I just don't know how to behave as a person who's like a good insider person. I'm incapable of doing it, even when I set and I've set it as goals. Okay, systematic. I just can't. I don't know why I can't do it. There's at some point when I'm not noticing it, something shifts and I don't notice it, and I'm kind of out of the game. And so anyway, it makes it most things, it makes a little bit difficult in socially, but some things, of course, are more easy because you are freer to do what you want because people they simply don't bother trying to tell you that you're doing it wrong, like low carb, keto, and these kind of things. reversing my diabetes. Yeah, it's impossible. Okay, fine. I'm going to try and do it. Probably because it's impossible.
There's so many parallels there. And now that you mention it, there really is, with this sort of swimming upstream politically and swimming upstream from a dietary perspective, being unorthodox. God, and maybe it's just that's where I'm starting to wonder. There's something wrong with me because like I do it across multiple dimensions. I do it at work.
Yes,
I do things completely different at work.
Probably.
Yeah, probably. It's just probably how I'm wired.
And that was my point. I think it's we just have to accept at some point. I mean, I just turned 60, so maybe it's time that I accept it. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's probably going to make my life easier if I at least accept that it's just the way it is, and I can't help it, and I'm going to have to try and see if I can compensate for it, so I don't have as many downsides from it. But there are upsides. It's at least you don't feel as much as a complete simp, patsy, and victim. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's our destiny, Brent.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to roll with it, and I'm also going to keep trying to persuade people that respecting individual rights is probably better for everyone. This leads me to one of these other points, and I know I'm tying these things together,
Yeah, do.
but one of your points is rejection of lying or any doctrine or religion that excuses or encourages it. And you said
Yes.
no ends justifies the means.
Yes.
And I want to know, because this seems to be in conflict with not only your view on democracy and rule of law, but also Christianity. So if we say we're not going to be Machiavellian, and we're not going to say, to your earlier point, like, well, this is going to result in a better, like a utilitarian argument, a better society with more comfortable people. I'm saying, okay, if the ends doesn't justify the means, then we have to respect individual rights.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
it's
regardless of the outcomes, right? Like if
it's a
you're going to be
good
able,
that it's a valid point, but I think you can have rules which are not acceptable for some people and it doesn't have to be based on a doctrine of lies and deceit.
what
And
about force though? What about force and violence? Because let's be clear. Let's be clear.
yes,
And this is something that a
yes,
lot of people don't appreciate that I think
yes,
is super important.
yes,
Is that every law,
yes,
if you actually strip off the bullshit and you strip off the propaganda and all the patriotism and all the things that have polluted our minds, if you actually look at it objectively, and a law is nothing more than opinion backed up with a death threat. The politician's opinion
yes.
written down on a piece of paper that if you disagree and mean it, that the state will actually murder you for violating. And I don't think people think of it that way.
Yes, maybe not murder, but
Whoa. No,
there will.
100% murders, Klaus. Let's walk through this. How about this, Klaus? You give me the most trivial example of a law that might be on the books in Finland.
I don't know, maybe some traffic law.
Okay, so I violated traffic law. What happens next?
Yeah, you'll get a fine. Let's say you speed.
Whoa. Yeah. So hold on, you're jumping ahead. Like I want to.
Yeah. Anyway,
let's concretize this. Let's step by step. Like what happens? So Klaus is deciding to, I don't know, go 5 miles per hour or kilometers per hour over
yes,
what some politician deemed that this particular area was acceptable. They
yes,
chose this. You
yes.
didn't choose it.
No,
You happen to just be minding your own business,
indeed.
driving this certain speed, and then what happens?
Well, up here we get a photograph gets taken by a cam. We have street side cameras that take photos.
Okay, cool. So you have a photo, and then what happens with that photo?
It goes to whoever at the police department who takes care of processing them, and they will then send you you get a letter with the fine.
Okay, I don't want to pay the fine. I don't. I want to just live my life peacefully, and then what happens?
Yeah, you probably get. I haven't tried it, but you probably get more letters with more fees added on, and in the end, you probably get a court date, I suppose, at some point.
I don't want to go to court. I want to just live my life peacefully.
Yeah. Now we're getting
At
into
some
territory.
point, it's not the specifics. Oftentimes, I like to use the drug argument. Let's say I want to grow a plant in my backyard that the politician says is not cool.
Sure.
It's cannabis or whatever it is.
Yeah.
They find out about it. There's gonna be some armed people that show up at my house, and if I don't answer the door, they will break down my door violently, and they will attack. They will attack me, and if I try to defend myself, that I'll be murdered on the spot 100% of the time, right? And so that's a very clear example. But every law is essentially
good
this.
example.
There's steps. Sometimes there's more steps before you get to the murder.
I think most people here probably, if they come and break your door down for, let's say, you're growing your cannabis plant, most people are probably not going to defend themselves, so they.
That's irrelevant, right? So, and this is where I want to get down to the brass tacks.
Sure.
And people always say this to me.
No,
there's two things that people say. They say, number one, show me how many times that happens. Like, well, yeah, people don't like to get murdered by the government, so they often comply. They'll just whatever. They would rather get tackled and handcuffed and thrown in a cage than die. That doesn't change the moral component of this, because we're talking about Christianity, we're talking about universal ethics and foundational things. So ultimately, like in America, it's way easier. You have guns, you can defend yourself. But if you then shoot the officer, they always say to me, then you murdered a police officer. And it's like, well, hold on a second. If ethics are truly universal, that means every human being must abide by the same rules. And if you put on a badge and a costume, that doesn't give you extra rights to initiate violence against people. It doesn't give you the right to knock down your neighbor's door, tackle them, kidnap them, throw them in a cage, or ultimately murder them, right? And so that's where this thing typically bifurcates. There's always those two components of it. Well, people just comply, and then, so... But I just want to get to the really getting deep into the moral foundations here. And it's like, if we truly believe that individuals have inalienable rights granted to them by the Creator, then they're unassailable. And any violations of these, they should be strictly prohibited. Tell me where I'm wrong there, because that's where my autistic brain goes.
I agree in principle, but I suppose my argumentation for having policing and having laws in practice it gives you in general a safer society, and probably we'd have more crime and have a less peaceful, a less effective society without it. Which goes to one of the points I think I made, which was the high trust society. And I think although it's a bit of an oxymoron, maybe, high trust society, and why do we have to police it? Well, in practice, it is probably a little bit, people behave a little bit better if they think there are consequences, if they understand the negative consequences of their actions.
This is really important to suss out, because I think oftentimes I get a little bit of a straw man fallacy applied, which is, what, you don't want any policing? It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Like, policing is a valid service. It's an important service. It's a necessary service. Protection of your person, protection of your property, 100% needs to happen, right? But my claim is that we don't need to do this through a government monopoly, right? Like, you can very easily have competitive market forces that provide policing services, particularly with the technology we have right now, that could be responsible for guarding your home, making sure that your children, your wife and yourself are taken care of, and making sure there's somebody there to intervene in case you're getting your property or your person assaulted, right? Like, the problem, I think, with policing worldwide is that there's not this adherence to, okay, we're only going to protect natural rights. We're going to protect person. We're going to protect property. We're going to have some sort of restorative justice, which can be done through the market, no problem. But what we have now is this sort of like myriad of laws that are sort of, most of them are there to protect, rich and powerful people and tilt the playing field. And there's all these, you got to have a license to cut hair, and there's all these laws.
Yeah, sure. No, I get your point absolutely, and I do think that I don't know the statistics, but my guess is, if you looked at let's say here in Finland, the Finnish police, what is the brunt of the work that they do? Who do they do it for? I'm pretty sure they do it for the state, for the country, not for individuals. So I'm pretty sure it's related to going after people who've done traffic violations, and doing things which are not really about protecting other people, but more about protecting the economic interests of the government or the country, however you want to express it. Yeah, that would be my guess without knowing it. But
that's probably fair. And I know the United States is a different animal, and the number of laws that we have, and the number of laws that are rent-seeking in nature, right, that are intended to tilt the playing field towards corporate interests, like they're endless.
Yeah, I think here I would say, but this is purely guess. I haven't looked into it in detail, but I would say here the laws, there is some dynamics to it as well. But I think there are plenty of laws and systems in place to support industry and businesses and these kind of things, to make them grow, etc. But I still think the main interest of the law is related to the interest of the government. Yeah, and of course it's presented as, of course, that actually the government is the same as the people. So this is the way this is the way it's, I would say, sold or presented. And maybe that's the way it started. But of course, it's an endless, the hunger, there's an insatiable hunger for more taxation. And basically
Always.
that's kind of what it goes back to. It always goes back to money, resources.
Which let me pivot to one of your other points, which is compassion and charity. I think this is a super interesting topic. Talk to me about compassion and charity.
Yeah, I think as we talked about before, I think we in a way we have maybe even too much compassion and charity in some of our societies over here, and it's based, and the criteria it's based on are not up for discussion. So,
which leads me to ask: is it actually compassion and charity?
No, of course not. We're back to it's kind of. I would say a lot of the things around compassion and charity in our Nordic social democratic societies work in the same way as if you think about organizations like the Red Cross and other NGOs, where they do deliver services, and they do provide things for people, but mainly they provide benefits for the people who work in the system, which may or may not be okay. But that's the way it is, and that's one of the reasons why things like, same as in the US, but for different reasons, healthcare cost is a huge problem and healthcare and social cost is the single beats. It's about I think it's about a third of the public budget in Finland.
Wow.
And I may be right. Maybe it's only 25%. Whatever. It's a huge amount of money, and it's been a continuous point of discussion as long as I can remember in my lifetime, that they are growing, that they are too high, and it's too much, and we need to control them. And they only develop one way, which is up. Mm-hmm. Because of course, also this system is the biggest employer in the country. And you have a whole lot of, a big part of the electorate is working for this system. So what's the likelihood of them wanting to trim the system and make it more effective and smaller? It's absolutely zero. And in the US, it's the same, although the mechanism is different, but but the end result is the same. It's a $1 trillion industry, pharmaceuticals and healthcare. It's so big, it doesn't matter whether it's public, private, or whatever it is. It's so ingrained and so big that it's an illusion that you can do anything to it with any straightforward means.
Yeah, 100% agree. And the reason I ask this question is I think that this is one of the pieces of the puzzle that's really, really important if we want to fix things. And the fact that compassion and charity have been conflated with government programs is ghastly to me. And this goes back to maybe the Christian aspect of this. I'm not a Christian, I'm an atheist, I'm agnostic technically, but I see the value in Christianity and other religious charity programs. There used to be a time in America, and I think this is what comes down to high trust too, is that without that sort of homogenous, we're just going to give whatever level of income and healthcare and housing, whatever, just indiscriminately to people. Particularly, you mentioned the migrants that are flooding in and they're not contributing to the system, right? Like there was this sort of gating mechanism that was tied to voluntary charity, which was based on this sort of religious belief that everybody is a human being that's entitled to dignity and is entitled to some base level of support, assuming that they're doing the right things, right? I think these groups did this. It was a community-based thing. You knew your neighbors, which ones were legitimately in need, because things happen to people, man. People get sick, people die. There's helping widows and helping orphans, and like these religious groups used to exist, and maybe not even religious. There was mutual aid societies. There was these voluntary groups, and their job was to like sit the person down in front of them and like, tell me your story. What's going? There's like this filtering mechanism, and I
Yes.
think that kept out the free riders, that kept out the nefarious people that were just trying to manipulate other people and weaponize this sort of empathy. And I think
Yes.
that's missing. And I think this is what's going to kill not only your Nordic socialist systems, but also the United States, this sort of pathological quasi empathy. But it's not empathy, man. It's like, there's always that, I think it's Thomas Sowell quote, which is like, people are often, conspicuously compassionate with other people's money. It's like,
Indeed, precisely. And it's exactly that, like you mentioned, or that we talked about earlier. It's part of the power, a structure which is seen as part of some power that you can utilize, and that's the way it's used. And I'd like to add that in my lifetime, individual charity in the Nordic countries is, I would say, almost non-existent. It's neither expected nor existent. There are maybe some cases, but mostly all of that has been delegated to the government. At what point, I don't know, but before my time. So, and
yeah,
the reason
I
I
think it's a
put it in,
shame.
and the reason I put it in there was precisely for this reason, because I think there is definitely, especially up here, there is a place for more individual charity, and people individually getting involved in helping other people. And actually, charity, it doesn't always have to be that somebody is down and out financially or something. It's there are many levels of charity in different things. It's about community, like you said. And I think that's something which is missing, and I think it's much less missing actually in the US. I mean, in the US, there's a much more of a tradition still for actually, at least for giving money to charity. But I think even giving money is not the point for me. In my point here that I on the list, it was more to be involved.
Yeah, and I think we see this in the United States, at least, with the religious communities. You see a lot of people
Yes.
that don't donate at homeless shelters, or they volunteer their time to work with these various groups. Like, there is a deep tradition in the religious community, and I think that is powerful and it is underappreciated. And the more we move away from that, the more disconnected we become as societies. It's we talked about social media. These people are more connected to strangers on the internet than they are with their neighbors in a 5-mile radius, and it didn't used to be that way here.
No, and I actually think Finland is. I think Finland is one of the countries with the most people living alone.
Mm.
Most adults living alone. So Finland, in a way, which is also a very digitized country, very surveilled country. In a way, Finland is kind of a pilot project for the postmodern, digitized, connected world where you don't have to be, where you're encouraged to have no connection with anyone except through your device.
That's terrible. I think that's going to result in some pretty negative outcomes overall.
Yes.
All right, let me get the last one. I'll move on to the other stuff later, but I want to talk about cultural and moral heritage, valuing shared traditions and ethical foundations, including Christian values, while respecting pluralism.
Yes. Yeah, it's just my way of saying that I'm tired of this nonsense about Islamophobia and all this other shit. I just can't hear it anymore. And I've not, I've done business globally, and I've done a lot of business in the Arab countries, Near East, and Turkey, etc. I know tons of people who are Muslims. I have nothing against in Muslims individually at all, and they are not even the ones making the issue here. The ones making the problem are all these pathologically empathetic people who hate, let's say, our local culture, and who think that it's more exciting to have people from places who are non-integratable here because they may have had a good holiday experience when they were 18 years old, and now they're thinking back on it as 55-year-old ladies about all the good times they had in Zambia or in Morocco or wherever they were with the local guys, and they want some of that. And I think just negating our own cultural heritage is just completely suicidal and absolutely ridiculous. And I won't stand for it.
Yeah, I think there's nothing
It's
hateful.
not against someone. It's just for what we have. In a way, you could say it's a conservative point of view. I don't consider myself to be very conservative, actually, but that actually is a pretty conservative viewpoint, that you want to conserve some values and some heritage and things like that. But I think it's important. And even if we pretend that we don't have a food culture, we don't have a this culture, we don't have a that culture, and somebody from I don't know, somebody from Congo has much more culture. I mean, that's obvious nonsense. Just because it's not the same doesn't mean we don't have it. I mean, just because we're not dancing in the same way, or our way of expressing ourselves here is a very introverted way. Is that worse? No, hell no. Is it better? Also no.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for having that shared culture and that sort of history, that narrative, that backwards-looking narrative. And I don't think there's any problem with integrating new people into that. America is all about
No,
that. We're the
exactly.
melting pot.
Precisely.
But America developed a culture over
Yes.
time that was that. We were the
Yes.
melting pot.
Yes.
But we all had this sort of shared thing, and people used to come to America because they wanted to become Americans. They wanted to participate in that experiment. And now it seems like we're importing a bunch of people that just want to, operate antithetical to that sort of shared history and culture, and they're shrieking at everybody. We have to tear everything down. We have to burn it to bits. And I don't think that's healthy for society at large. You can't function with a minority of the population that just wants to destroy everything.
And we have, I think, up here we have, especially in Finland, what I see is a culture where there is kind of an interesting, I don't know. On one hand, people are very proud of the Finns are very proud of their country. They're proud of being Finnish. They're willing to fight for the country. At least some of the people are like this. At the same time, there is I don't know, to me, an irrational irreverence for, let's say, for instance, the Germans, they really know how to do things well, and kind of an odd, I don't know, inferiority complex, but still some level of strong national complex. And there is, I refuse to believe that there are any of the immigrants since 2015 who come to Finland because they want to become Finns. Hell no. Different from going to America and becoming an American, I definitely can tell you. But the dangerous thing here is that when you have a country which then has this, maybe to an extent a little bit of an inferiority complex, you can have a disproportionate influence on many things from people who don't understand why things probably are better the way that they evolved to be, because they evolved for a reason, and then they would have evolved differently if it was in Somalia. But
I don't think
anyway.
I don't think it's a very controversial take. Maybe I'm wrong, but everyone can start yelling
We'll
at me in
see.
the comments. We'll see.
We'll see.
Wanted to wrap a little bit here, just this topic. Generally, give me, like, if you were to finger wag, do the old man get off my lawn thing for society, say like, hey, you're really screwing up, and this is my TLDR. This is Klaus's prescription in a nutshell. What would that be?
Yeah, we need to I haven't thought about it in a short sense, but I think goes back to we need to protect our heritage, our culture, our rules and regulations. We need to understand and protect the processes and mechanisms that made this place a safe and prosperous place for most people. And a key part of that is related, in Finland's case, is related to fundamental Christian values, rule of law, democracy, and almost no immigration.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for that that encapsulation. Probably get a bunch of hate in the comments, but
Oh, for sure.
I need more comments anyway. So bring it on.
I'm not even a Finn myself.
Right. So I want to go to something more controversial, since you were actually, you're not a political commentator, a philosophical commentator by trade. You're the carnivore guy. I want to know about your most hateful viewpoint, which is, why the hell don't you like honey on steak? What do you, what do you got against it, Klaus? I saw this video of a guy marinating a giant ribeye in honey. I thought it looked like, and I'm like, Klaus
It's
is
probably
talking.
good, yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably good. No, I don't have anything. I'm just not. I wouldn't make it myself, but I think if you have it once in a while, it's not going to kill you, is it? But no, the reason why honey is possibly not a good idea to eat in large quantities is because it has a high level, a high amount of fructose, and if you eat a lot of it, it's bad for your liver. But I mean, we're not talking about, if you do a honey marinated something,
Yeah, I
you're
know.
not going to get a fatty liver from eating that once, are you? So
I kind of tease, but kind of not, because there seems to be this debate in that carnivore community. Number one, is it animal based because it comes from bees? And then number two, I think Paul Saladino is a big proponent of this, and claims that honey can actually lower your blood glucose and increase your insulin sensitivity. There's a bunch of debate about this, so I knew it's a.
I don't think that's probably not correct, but I think the point. My viewpoint on this discussion, and the reason why I'm bringing it up, is not because of having a cheat meal is going to kill you or something like that. I think my attack angle is one that is from a point of view of somebody who is metabolically ill, somebody who's overweight, metabolic syndrome, very insulin resistant, maybe diabetes too, maybe high blood pressure, etc. So all of the big list of the metabolic issues, or the short list of those. If you want to use, if you want an effective way of dealing with that, maybe as a dietary introduction to this, to get yourself in better shape quickly, it's a good idea to try a very strict elimination diet, because it kind of helps you. First of all, you're going to lose a bunch of weight when you do it. Probably most people will. So by just eating meat, eggs, and butter, meat, eggs, and dairy products, which is my version of carnivore, and if you have autoimmune issues, allergies, whatever, it might be a good idea to do an even stricter version where you just eat muscle meat. So no dairy, no eggs, and nothing, because some people have some allergy issues with dairy and with eggs. So it's a way of kind of resetting your system, and then it makes it very easy. It is very easy to see when you add things back. Does this agree with me or not? And I would say, for me, I certainly noticed some things that I didn't expect. And by the way, I have my body agrees very well with honey, so I can easily eat honey. But I don't. But I have tried. It makes no difference. But let's say with some dairy products, I definitely, I get some pimples on my head if I eat them, so I don't eat them, etc. Things like this. So you can find out what agrees with you and what doesn't, and that's the point. The point isn't, it's not neither a moral point nor a social point nor an ideological point or anything like that. It's just a practical kind of health, medical, therapeutic point. And I think probably most people don't need to stay strict carnivore forever, or even for that long. I started my own journey with a ketogenic diet, so not a carnivore diet, but a ketogenic one, which was mainly meat and eggs, but with a little bit of cabbage and some other low carb vegetables. And the reason I kind of drifted almost away from that, from the plant stuff, was simply laziness. It's just because then I don't have to cook them, and it's just very easy to cook a few eggs and some meat. Yeah. And have focus on other things than food, which is another part of the, let's say, therapeutic element, but maybe more a psychological therapeutic element, because some of us are gluttonous, and it's better for us if we spend as little time as possible with food, around food, eating, buying, preparing, etc. And simplifying it down just makes this addictive behavior easier to control. And
yeah, it's pretty hard to overindulge on fatty meat, right?
For me, impossible. I mean, I can. There's just I'd say even ketogenic, even if you have a little bit of broccoli and carrot, if you keep your carbs under 20 grams, even if you add some plants, for me at least, it's impossible to overeat. I just eat, still I can't do it. But anyway, that's the point. And I think there is a group of people. I don't know how many. I'm guessing 10-20% of people who they have a good relationship to food, and for some other reason they got fat and unhealthy, and they don't need to go as strict as this. And of course, people can do what they want. I don't really care. It's not none of my business what people eat. But my advice for somebody who is already maybe a little bit middle-aged or older, like me, if you want to reverse your type 2 diabetes, if you want to get rid of your medications, or try to get rid of medications, give it a go. 3 months strict carnivore, and then shift to a ketogenic, or just do ketogenic, and do it for some months, and keep doing it. And I would say 95% guaranteed success rate of some level. Some people can reverse it very effectively, and a little bit depending on your social situation, how strict you can do it, and then it may take a little bit longer.
Yeah, man, talk about swimming upstream. That seems to be a counter to all the prevailing medical advice that you'll get from a doctor who has like zero nutritional training, and a bunch of the propaganda that's put out into the media. And so I feel it too. Like, I feel exactly what you do, which is I've seen the community, these people doing these N of 1 experiments that all magically have the same results. They become metabolically healthy. Their insulin levels drop. Their blood glucose management is better. Their body weight goes down. Their visceral fat like, you can just go down the list, and then people will literally look at you and say, "You're killing yourself," which is the wildest thing I've ever seen.
It's just crazy, isn't it? And you can even if you want to Dr. David Unwin from the UK, he has an NHS practice close to Liverpool, and he has, I think he has close to 200 patients that he has who have gotten their type 2 diabetes into remission, and he's kept very good statistics on these people. So he has what I would say, it's not an N equals 1 experiment, but actually very good follow up on that. So for somebody who is interested in convincing themselves, no need to listen to me, just listen to David Unwin. You can find him on X and other platforms.
There's a bunch more too. Dr. Tro, there's Dr. Ovadia. I mean, there's so many people that have got these.
Tro is a good one. Ken Berry, Sean Baker, etc. For carnivore, Sean Baker. The reason I mention David Unwin specifically is because he doesn't say do carnivore, do keto. He doesn't say a specific. What he's talking about is reducing your blood sugar So, and to do that, you need to reduce your carbohydrates. It doesn't mean you have zero carbohydrates, etc. I think he has a very, I would say, if we consider the whole population, he has a very realistic and effective approach, which is a non-labeled approach, so you don't have to get name called if you do it. And I think that's plus he has the stats. I don't know how much statistics the other guys have done, but David has many years of statistics on this. So for those who are most skeptical, I think he's a convincing case, because he's not and he's not really selling anything. So
awesome, man. Well, hey, we're a little bit over time. I really appreciate you stopping by, man. You're one of my favorite people on X. You know this, man. I love you, dude.
Thanks.
And
Great to be here.
you're one of the few people that will actually look at the craziness that I post and be like, I accept you, brother. You're cool with me. It's a very weird spot being the person I am, being so against the grain in so many ways. So
Brent, some of the posts I'm a little bit afraid of liking, because I'm a bit of a chicken, and also because I would like eventually, I would like to keep my possibility of visiting the US open, so I have to be a little bit careful.
Fair enough.
And
well, I appreciate you coming on, man. Like, I love the conversation. You're a really insightful dude. Got a ton of collected wisdom, and I'm really happy that we had this conversation, man.
Yeah, so love to talk to you always.
Yeah. So why don't you let the people that may not know where you are, where to find you on the internet?
Yeah, I'm pretty much only active on X, and my handle is you can see it here in the picture, at Claus Carlsen 1 is my handle, and so I have an X account, and I'm relatively active, and I try to respond to everyone, and happy to for people to DM me if they want to get induction into healing themselves, into exercise and healthy eating for people over 50, and definitely men over 50. I can talk about that, and we can develop some programs and get you in shape and get you healthy.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't recommend your account enough, man. It's a really it's been helpful to me, and I see you helping all these other people. So keep up the good work, and we'll chat later, brother.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Brent. See you.
Bye.
Bye.